Hello and welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go for a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. Pick up a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. This midweek episode we'll be going over the WoW Classic forums essentially. It's only going to be a very short episode, but we're going to be looking at essentially a forum post and agreeing, disagreeing, going at it in detail and sort of the best points and if they're completely wrong or not, essentially. This one is a big post. This is a very big post. I've stumbled across it. I've not read it fully. I read the first chapter. There's like 5 different chapters this guy's put. But essentially, the chapter is Hardcore Mode Made Me Realise. And this is how it starts. That WoW from 2004 to 2006 era was such a solid game. The developers had an absolutely amazing job creating a game that was tough but also rewarding. Very true, I do agree with that point. The sense of gear progression is real, the sense of getting stronger is real, the world was well thought out and developed, classes were developed thoughtfully, yeah, and have their own identities. Each class brings their own positives and negatives to a group. The game wasn't perfect, but it was extremely fun. This is true, but some classes weren't developed. I do have to say that Retribution Paladin, literally they were making changes to it a week before launch. So yeah, I think that some classes were a little bit more worked on than others. Not classes as a whole, but specializations. And it is true, they all bring their own positive and negatives because paladins still do bring blessings such as Blessing of Might, Salvation, etc. Shamans for Horde brought Wind Fury Totem, many different totems like Tremor as well, stuff like that. So again, I do understand the point and I do agree. Hardcore has me feeling like I did when I first got into WoW in 2006, making poor decisions, such as last night. I told myself that I needed to go to bed because I have I have adult responsibilities, but I wanted to finish one more quest. Well, that one more quest turned into a whole dungeon run, made today a living nightmare, but it was well worth it. I literally have had that sense of just one more game again, or just one more again. I haven't had in years. With WoW, the sense of WoW hardcore community is awesome right now. I do agree that the hardcore as a whole is hardcore community as a whole is good, but I do think that there are people who tarnish that reputation, and they're the ones that I kind of come across a lot of the time. Or I've said this in past sort of episodes, you do come across the more negative people in Classic than you do the positive people, unless you really, dig through the trash hard enough, so to speak. I didn't have as much free time to play like I used to, but I've been enjoying the journey so far when I do play. But this made me realise, how did WoW go from this absolutely amazing journey, the game to the train wreck it is today, that I haven't touched in 4 years and have absolutely no interest in going back to? Why would Blizzard take a game receipt that was clearly working, or recipe, sorry, and try to recreate it? I get it, they need to keep up with the times, but it's so odd seeing 2 versions of one game where they're essentially 2 completely different games and play nothing alike. That happens with any sort of game. That happens with any sort of game. If you look at any sort of franchise that's been going on for this sort of long, not many have been. But if you look at, say, the Assassin's Creed games, you take the first 3 sort of games, Assassin's Creed, Assassin's Creed 2, and Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. They are completely different to the RPG element style that you have in Assassin's Creed now through Origins, Valhalla, and what's the other one? God, it eludes me. The one with Spartans and Greeks, I completely forgotten. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I just can't remember it. But it's a completely different genre, and you have to evolve these sort of games. And the thing is, he hasn't played it for 4 years. In most recent times, Dragonflight being the most recent expansion is deemed to be, by quite a lot of people, one of the better expansions, in one of at least the top 2 expansions, in my honest opinion. It can rival the sort of Wrath of the Lich King and Legion sort of expansions, which is really, really good. Shadowlands and BFA were train wrecks. I do have to admit that. They really weren't good. The things that they put in place in these expansions, Azerite and stuff like that, it really wasn't good, and it really did feel like a grind. But the thing is, this guy is talking about, going through the grind and stuff, And the leveling in Classic is the whole grinding mechanism of World of Warcraft in Classic. But gearing and, doing your daily stuff is that whole portrayal of retail at the moment, or was in the past couple of expansions. So you did have to grind out your Azerite power or your Covenant abilities, stuff like that. And the only problem with that is if you didn't do a day of your dailies or such, you would fall behind, and that didn't necessarily feel good. But I do understand what he means by gearing, and let's face it, gearing is a lot easier in retail. But I think there's two different completely ways to look at this. The gearing in Classic is very slow, and you can possibly not get anything for 2, 3, 4 hours of raiding. Whereas if you go to retail and you do 4 hours of battlegrounds, you are guaranteed to get a piece of gear. Not just one piece, but several pieces. You're guaranteed to get quite a lot of gear. So it's more rewarding for the actual time that you put in. And not many people do have hours upon hours to put into the game. So retail is more rewarding in that way, to be honest, more so than anything. I do get what he's saying, but he can't really say that he has no interest in going back if he hasn't played the most recent expansion, which is Dragonflight, and that's been out for a year now, nearly. So I don't think he can really speak upon that, to be honest. Blizzard states the drop in sub counts is because we have grown older, which could be the case for some, but have they ever just considered their design recipe just sucks? I mean, literally all my friends have played classic versions until raiding they complete the game. My dad and uncle even have gotten back into WoW Classic. We have recreated guilds, etc. My experience was truly fun while it lasted. Hardcore is the same, we are all having a blast. But classic versions have an end, and eventually people get bored doing the same, knowing no new content will ever happen. Now, here's the kick. Because at BlizzCon, in less than a month's time, I think they're going to release Classic Plus, or announce Classic Plus. I think that they'll introduce stuff like raids to Classic. I think that that's what they'll do, or they'll put some sort of sandbox mode in it. I don't know how to explain it, but I think Classic will be getting more and more updates. I think the main part of that is nostalgia. Nostalgia is a massive part in going back to the old World of Warcrafts, because I personally enjoy it because it's something to turn my brain off when I level in Hardcore Classic. It's definitely not as intense as arenas that I do in retail, anything like that. So it's just nice to see the old world of Azeroth almost. But at the same time, I can kind of see why retail is very off-putting, because it seems very back-end loaded. You don't really get much in terms of enjoyment out of the leveling in retail. But I do have to say nostalgia does play a massive part in people wanting to play World of Warcraft Classic and Hardcore. That's the same with Wrath Classic as well, because ICC just came out. Literally, I've hopped on essentially and checked to see if the patch has been out, and it is. It's the maintenance was meant to be 11 CEST that it ended, but it ended a few hours early, which is amazing. And I have hopped on and had a look, and I am so ready for this patch in Wrath Classic, because this is the first patch that I can remember, quite well remember from from starting World of Warcraft. So I am so excited about this patch, and it is a massive nostalgic feeling for me, and that's what brings people back to Classic. I do have to say that. I don't feel like we, the community, are the problem with WoW sub count drops. I think the new game design recipe that is more focused on a different playstyle than what most want is the problem. The dev team is just so disconnected from the ideal audience, and they just want the game to be an esport. The game needs to go back to being about a journey to cap, the journey of getting better gear, the journey of making friends, the journey of feeling like you're truly progressing in the game. Progressing in the game is raiding, which in Classic, that is what you do, and it's PvP. And they have expanded on these aspects of the game. In PvP, you can get your gladiator mount, you can get certain ratings, etc. In raiding, you have different difficulties. You don't have the one difficulty where you can eventually just clear it, like steamroll it. You have normal, heroic, and mythic for retail raids. You have to look at this as a whole. Yes, you're saying that the dev team are disconnected and stuff, and sub count is always going to drop. Games always drop, no matter how old the game is. It will obviously go up at release, up and up. Each expansion, you get a bit more and more, but inevitably it will drop. It will drop, because people who play it get older and they can't play it anymore. There's many different reasons, but it will even out. And I think it's evened out at about 5.5 mil. I don't know, I'm just completely guessing. But let's take that as a ballpark. It peaked at like 11, 12 mil, something like that, back in Wrath of the Lich King, and then started to decline in Cataclysm. If you look at any sort of numbers from a subscription-based game, or anything really, I don't think anything comes close in terms of retaining this sort of global fan base or gamers, I guess. The only ones that I can really think of would be maybe sort of like Rocket League, something that's very simple but very amazing at the same time. Anything like that. Maybe like Fortnite, stuff like that. But over the course of 20 odd years that it's been going, I'd say if it is around 5-6 mil, it's a very stable state. And if you look at if you break down who plays what, so if you take retail, you probably have like 4 mil people that play retail. And then you probably have like 3.5 million of them that play Classic but didn't enjoy Classic. So Classic goes down to about 2.5, maybe 2 million people, and they're spread out across 3 different like World of Warcrafts at the moment. And if you enjoy all of them, perfect. But some people might just enjoy Classic, some people might enjoy retail, some people might find Classic completely boring. They might not have ever played it, and they think, oh, this is boring as I can't be asked to like just mindlessly kill mobs for no reason. Like I want some pieces of gear and stuff. I want like my epics. I want to do some battlegrounds. I want to do some PvP. There's loads of different reasons why people wouldn't enjoy Classic as well as like not enjoying retail, etc. I think it's very much a double-ended sword, because I kind of understand what you're saying, but at the same time, I would say retail has more player base than Classic does. Classic might have it at the moment, or it might be very even at the moment, because the hype around Classic Hardcore, very much so. But that will inevitably go back to retail, because Classic does have an end, unlike many MMOs. And like they said, if you haven't... because there's an end, people can get bored and discouraged from it. And I think this is why they'll bring out Classic Plus in the at BlizzCon. They'll announce it. But honestly, I just don't know what to say. There are still some shit expansions, like older expansions. Burning Crusade, yeah, it's all right. It wasn't great, to be honest. It really wasn't great. It was still a bit rough around the edges in terms of the classes. They still felt a bit not quite complete, some of them. Wrath is the real first one that's like, yeah, this is good. This is good. And then you look at Cataclysm. That's deemed as one of the earlier expansions as well. It's gotten bad press, but I think that it is all right. I think people just didn't like it because it changed the old world as it was. And again, that's because people were nostalgic about the old Azeroth, the old Eastern Kingdoms, the old Kalimdor. And I think that is a massive part of Classic. It is the nostalgia, but once that nostalgia wears off, you can kind of see that it's not as developed. It's nowhere near as developed as retail is. And that's the problem with it. I will always back retail with what they're doing currently. Battle for Azeroth, Shadowlands, they got it completely wrong. But Dragonflight, they have corrected their mistakes that they've made in the past, and they are looking to still correct mistakes in 10.2, which 10.2 looks amazing, by the way. It looks absolutely fucking amazing. And that's not just because there are Boomkin cosmetics coming out and I main that spec. There's nothing to do with that at all. Yeah, essentially, I will always back retail in this, but I do understand what he means. But if you haven't played it for 4 years, you can't really have a say in it. I get that you kind of quit in Battle for Azeroth, and that's a sour taste, but that means that you played through Legion, and you must have enjoyed Legion. I think very few people didn't enjoy it. So why not give Dragonflight a chance, because it's on par with like that expansion potential. But who knows? It's a very well constructed. It is one of the more well constructed forum posts, in my honest opinion. And I do agree with some of his statements. I really do. But I do have to push back on some of them because, yeah, I think this guy's representation of retail is one that classic players take to heart, and then they say go back to retail as like an insult, and like they just start slating you because you play retail like World of Warcraft, and it's like that's not really a big problem. It's a good game at the moment, so it's one of them things I do have to kind of push back on a bit. But that is it for this episode. Thank you all very much for listening. Do check out all the socials down below: Twitch, YouTube, TikTok. Like absolutely everything is happening. Constant streams are happening on Twitch as well. I think pretty much every day at this point. We'll be live tomorrow at 8 CEST, so 7. Are we still in British Standard Time? I think that's going to leave soon. I think it's 7 BST still. So, but yeah, we'll be live then. Thank you all very much for listening once again, and go Valor friend. Goodbye all.